The rain was relentless, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. Manchester, usually vibrant, felt gray and oppressive as I drove home, the wipers struggling to keep pace with the downpour. I am Quentin, 44, an IT specialist. My life until recently had been a carefully constructed sequence of routines and small joys, all shared with my wife, Bronte. We'd been married for 17 years, a seemingly solid partnership built on shared dreams and quiet evenings. Or so I thought. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Bronte, a freelance graphic designer, began working longer hours, citing increased client demands. The late nights at her computer, the hushed phone calls taken in the hallway, I initially dismissed them as the natural ebb and flow of her profession. But then came the changes in her demeanor. The warmth that had always defined her seemed to cool, replaced by a distracted air. She became less interested in our shared activities, less affectionate. One Tuesday, Bronte said she had to attend a last-minute design conference in London. "It's a great opportunity, Quentin," she said, her eyes flitting away from mine. "I need to network, make connections." I kissed her goodbye, a nagging unease settling in my stomach. It wasn't the conference itself, but the way she'd said it, the slight hesitation in her voice that bothered me. That evening, the house felt unusually empty. I tried to distract myself with work, but my mind kept wandering back to Bronte. I found myself drawn to her laptop, sitting innocently on her desk. I knew I shouldn't, that it was a violation of her privacy, but the suspicion had taken root, and I couldn't ignore it. I told myself I was just checking her calendar to see when she'd be back, a flimsy excuse that did little to quell my guilt. Her laptop was password protected, of course. I tried a few obvious combinations: our anniversary, her birthday, but none worked. Frustrated, I was about to give up when I noticed a small, almost imperceptible smudge on the L key. A sudden hunch, a desperate gamble, prompted me to type in Lawrence. The laptop unlocked. A wave of nausea washed over me as I navigated through her files. Emails, design projects, nothing out of the ordinary. Then I found a folder labeled Personal. Inside were subfolders, each meticulously organized. One, simply titled L, caught my eye. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was a collection of photos, dozens of them. Bronte, smiling, radiant, with a man I didn't recognize. They were in various locations: a cozy pub, a sun-drenched park, a dimly lit restaurant. In each photo, their body language was intimate, their eyes locked in a gaze that spoke of something far deeper than friendship. The man was tall, handsome, with dark hair and piercing blue eyes. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. I scrolled through the images, each one a fresh stab to my heart. Then I saw a photo of them kissing, a passionate, unguarded embrace. The background was unmistakable: the London Eye, the very city where Bronte was supposedly attending a design conference. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The room spun, the air thick and suffocating. I stumbled back, knocking over a stack of books. Sound echoed in the sudden silence, a stark reminder of my shattered reality. My wife, the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was having an affair. I spent the rest of the night in a daze, replaying the photos in my mind, searching for an explanation, a reason, anything to make sense of the betrayal. But there was nothing. Just the cold, hard reality of the images staring back at me. The next morning, Bronte returned, full of stories about the conference, the speakers, the networking opportunities. She seemed genuinely happy, oblivious to the turmoil raging inside me. I watched her, studying her face, searching for any sign of guilt, any hint of remorse, but there was nothing. She was a master of deception. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to know more to understand the extent of her betrayal. I decided to play along, to act as if nothing had happened while I gathered evidence. Over the next few weeks, I became a shadow, a silent observer in my own life. I tracked Bronte's movements, monitored her phone calls, scrutinized her every word. It was a torturous process, each new discovery a fresh wound. I learned that the man in the photos was Lawrence, an architect she had met at a design fair several months ago. Their affair had been going on for months, hidden beneath a web of lies and deceit. I discovered secret rendezvous, clandestine meetings in hotels and restaurants. I found text messages filled with longing and desire, details of their intimate encounters. The more I learned, the more my anger grew, a slow-burning rage that threatened to consume me. I confided in my best friend Callum, a pragmatic and fiercely loyal man. He listened patiently as I recounted the details of Bronte's betrayal, his face growing darker with each revelation. "You can't let her get away with this, Quentin," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You need to expose her, make her face the consequences of her actions." Callum helped me devise a plan, a carefully orchestrated scheme to reveal Bronte's affair and reclaim my dignity. It was risky, potentially explosive, but I was beyond caring. I wanted justice, and I was willing to do whatever it took to get it. First, we needed to confirm my suspicions about Lawrence. I knew he worked for a prestigious architectural firm in the city center. Callum, using his IT skills, managed to hack into the firm's database and retrieve Lawrence's personal information, including his home address. It turned out he was married with 2 children. The next step was to gather irrefutable evidence of their affair. Callum suggested hiring a private investigator, but I refused. I wanted to be the one to expose them, to witness their downfall firsthand. I decided to set a trap, to lure them into a situation where their betrayal would be undeniable. I knew that Bronte and Lawrence had a favorite meeting place, a secluded cottage in the countryside, a place they thought was safe from prying eyes. I decided to pay them a visit unannounced and unwelcome. I told Bronte that I had to go away on a business trip, a fabricated conference in Glasgow. She seemed relieved, almost eager to see me go. I packed my bags, kissed her goodbye, and left the house, knowing that she would soon be making her way to the cottage. I drove for hours, the rain still falling, the landscape blurring into a gray, monotonous expanse. As I neared the cottage, my heart pounded in my chest, a mixture of anger, anticipation, and a strange sense of dread. I parked my car a short distance from the cottage and approached on foot, moving silently through the trees. The cottage was small and unassuming, its windows glowing with a warm, inviting light. I crept closer, peering through the gap in the curtains. Inside, Bronte and Lawrence were sitting on the sofa, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames of the fireplace. They were laughing, talking intimately, their bodies closed together. It was a scene of domestic bliss, a perversion of the life I thought we had. I watched them for a few minutes, my anger building to a crescendo. Then I took a deep breath, steeled myself, and kicked the door open. "Surprise!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the small space. Bronte and Lawrence jumped up, their faces registering shock and horror. Bronte gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Lawrence stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Quentin, what are you doing here?" Bronte stammered, her voice trembling. "I could ask you the same question," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "But I think I already know the answer." I gestured around the room, taking in the scene of their illicit rendezvous. "This is quite the little love nest you've built for yourselves. Very cozy." Bronte tried to deny it, to explain it away, but her words were hollow, meaningless. The evidence was undeniable, the truth staring her in the face. "It's not what you think, Quentin," she pleaded, her eyes filled with tears. "Oh, I think it is exactly what I think," I said, my voice cold and hard. "You've been having an affair behind my back for months. You've lied to me, deceived me, and betrayed my trust. And now I am here to put an end to it." I turned to Lawrence, who was standing silently, his face pale and drawn. "And you," I said, pointing my finger at him. "You're a disgrace. A married man with children sneaking around with my wife. You should be ashamed of yourself." Lawrence tried to apologize, to offer excuses, but I cut him off. "I don't want to hear it," I said. "Just get out. Get out of my sight and out of my life." Lawrence didn't hesitate. He grabbed his coat and fled, disappearing into the night. I turned back to Bronte, who was now sobbing uncontrollably. "How could you do this to me?" I asked, my voice filled with pain and disbelief. "How could you betray me like this?" Bronte's explanation was a jumble of excuses, justifications, and self-pity. She claimed that I had neglected her, that I had become distant and unloving. She said that Lawrence had made her feel alive again, that he had given her the attention and affection she craved. I listened to her, my heart hardening with each word. I realized that I didn't know this woman, that the Bronte I had loved and cherished was just a facade, a carefully constructed illusion. "I'm done, Bronte," I said, my voice flat and emotionless. I am done with the lies, the deceit, the betrayal. I want a divorce. Bronte begged me to reconsider, to give her another chance, but I refused. The trust was broken, the damage irreparable. There was no going back. I left the cottage, leaving Bronte alone in the rain. I drove back to Manchester, my heart heavy but my resolve firm. The road ahead would be difficult, but I knew I had made the right decision. The divorce was messy and acrimonious. Bronte fought me every step of the way, trying to claim as much of my assets as possible. She even tried to blame me for her affair, accusing me of being controlling and emotionally abusive. But I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated or manipulated. Callum was a constant source of support, helping me navigate the legal complexities and providing a much-needed shoulder to cry on. He also made sure that Lawrence's wife found out about the affair, delivering a package of incriminating evidence to her doorstep. The fallout was swift and brutal. Lawrence's wife filed for divorce, and he lost his job at the architectural firm. His reputation was ruined, his life in tatters. As for Bronte, she ended up alone and miserable. Lawrence had dumped her as soon as his own life fell apart, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions. She lost her friends, her reputation, and her financial security. I, on the other hand, emerged from the ordeal stronger and more resilient. I focused on my work, my hobbies, and my friendships. I started dating again, cautiously and tentatively, learning to trust again, to open myself up to the possibility of love. It wasn't easy. The scars of Bronte's betrayal ran deep, and I knew they would always be a part of me. But I refused to let them define me, to let them dictate my future. I learned a valuable lesson from the experience, that people are not always who they seem to be, that even the closest relationships can be built on lies and deceit. But I also learned that I am stronger than I thought, that I can survive even the most devastating betrayals, and that I am capable of finding happiness again. Years later, I ran into Bronte at a local gallery. She looked older, worn down, and filled with regret. She tried to apologize, to ask for my forgiveness, but I simply nodded and walked away. There was nothing left to say. I had moved on, rebuilt my life, and found peace. Bronte, on the other hand, was still trapped in the past, haunted by the consequences of her choices. And in that moment, I realized that justice had been served, not through revenge or retribution, but through the simple act of moving on and finding happiness without her. My life isn't perfect, but it's mine, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.